Hi, Sherry. Thank you for submitting the 2 minute parent child assessment or checkup. I will go through it now and give you a sense of my reactions to your questions. First off, I also want to thank you for trusting me to give you some feedback on the most important person in your life, your child. In this case, your children. Now, I will start with a little bit of a joke here because your spouse is the one that's recommended me to you. That's usually trouble because usually it means the spouse is telling the parent, "Hey, you need to follow this guy or learn from this guy," and the other was saying no. So hopefully this won't turn you off. But let's get into it. So you've got a child between the ages of 6 and 9. You've got other children that are younger. And the reason I asked that question is because if the way the older child goes is kind of the way that the younger children will go as well. They tend to form or follow along in the wake more or less. And so knowing that this is the older child, that actually creates, in my view, more urgency to really get ahead of potential problems. And so I'm seeing here that you're a homeschool parent. Fantastic. I'm a big supporter of homeschooling for a variety of reasons we can talk more about if you'd like. This is one of the big reasons that the child and the parent end up having a ton of authority and influence over what the child's going to learn, how they're going to learn it, when they're going to learn it, etc. So awesome. Areas of interest for the child: social issues, finance, cooking. Cooking, by the way, y'all, is one of the best ways to get your child contributing to the household or the economy of the household. At 6 or anywhere from 6 to 9 years old, where your child is, my strong recommendation, is that they take over some significant chunk of the family shopping and the family cooking, and of course cleaning up as well. But you'll notice that if you start them early, they actually like it. They like it that it doesn't seem as much like work. By the time they're teenagers, they'll know it's work, but it'll be too late. They know how to do it. So that's a little bit of an encouragement. Let's see. Some of their child's learning is in the area of their curiosity. So here's a place that I start to put a little question mark, because in a homeschool environment, there's kind of different ways you approach homeschooling. One is to approach it as a school, but just at home. So this is the way I started with my kids until I kind of saw the light and made some transitions. But, hey, math starts at 8 o'clock. Be down here at the table at 8 o'clock and get your books out, right? That's one way to approach learning. It's not the one I would recommend. Certainly there are some skills and requirements that a child needs to learn, but making learning a part of the area of their curiosity, you can get to the same things. Happy to talk more about that later. Who should be primarily responsible for the child's learning? Now, on this point, I actually disagree with you. In the early years, yes, but long term, it's got to be the child. We got to switch this ownership from the parent to the child. And again, your kids are younger, and so this is a perfectly acceptable answer. But it's meant to really get a sense of where a parent is in their processing of the educational journey. We got to get the child to learn how to own their own learning experience, because you're not going to be around for that child all the time. And frankly, the earlier the child learns how to own their learning, the less you have to play a daily role in looking over their back, prodding them, cajoling them to do work, etc. All right, let's get to more of this. How does your child respond to failure? Kind of in between. You want them to see failure as a positive. That's, to me, is where grades and some of the things that happen in a traditional school or a traditional homeschool can actually bite you. They can start to be afraid of failure, and that's a problem as the world is changing and requiring everybody to become more comfortable with failure. The child's getting more curious as they get older. That's fantastic. It's very unusual, by the way, for most kids to do that, but it's possible in a home learning environment. Is the child motivated to get good grades? This is a little bit of a trick question, because my recommendation is that the child shouldn't be motivated to get good grades. They should be motivated to learn. Learn. They love learning. Grades are accidental. So this is one where, depending on the structure here, is one that I would want to be careful about, not putting too much emphasis on grades. In fact, I often tell parents to discourage grades entirely, because grades takes the attention from the learning and places it on a grade. And unfortunately, many grades are not great representation of the child's actual learning. We want the child to be focused on learning. The child's relationship with technology, used to produce content more so than consume. So great. Keep pushing this envelope towards the production side. Tech is increasingly a dangerous tool. Despite what you might hear and read, I have seen it up close in a variety of families. More often than not, tech will burn than will benefit. But if you're on the production side, doing videos, assessing videos, like doing stuff that's productive, that's actually good. Now, here's a great one. Very few parents understand this, so I want to encourage you. You guys are on the ball here. The next 10 years, nobody knows how this is going to all shake out. It's going to be unimaginable. Our artificial intelligence in particular is one that is really changing the game big time. We do not know how it's going to work. So that means the only way you can kind of prepare for the future is to make sure your child is able to weather the disruptions that will inevitably come. And that means they have to be a learner, because they're going to learn themselves through any sort of disruption. Assessing the parent now. And the parent and the child and their social support. So if your child has a concern or a problem, you mentioned that they only have one or two people that they would feel comfortable asking for help. Now, this to me is a big red flag. Now, it's not unusual, particularly in homeschool environments where you can kind of get a little isolated, but this is one you got to really work hard as a homeschool parent to get away from, because as your child ages from 6 or 9, somewhere in that age to 13, you want to know that this child has a whole bunch of folks that they can go to for any number of problems, people that you know and you trust and you share a common value system, so that the ideas and coaching you're going to get is, or the child's going to get, is positive. But if they don't have adult or even young adult supports, that means they're going to get content from elsewhere, and that is of real concern, because usually that's going to be online. Okay, so, and the way to do this, by the way, is I encourage every family to really look hard at joining a church or some sort of social group or social community that will allow them to build connection with other families, again, in the areas that you have in common. So this to me is the first red flag I see on your report, and one that I would encourage you to pay a lot of attention to. Happy to talk to you more about that if you'd like. A given week, one-on-one time, so 2 to 4 hours. That's pretty good. You want to keep pushing this up. Go and take them out for breakfast. And again, here's where those other supports oftentimes can play a role. They can take your child out on a one-on-one, once a week, once every other week, something like that. Buy them breakfast, go get a ice cream, whatever. And again, create more opportunities for the child and the parent, the child and a caring, competent adult to talk and to strategize about problems. Somewhere in between naturally smart and hard worker. Frankly, I don't believe that naturally smart pays a lot of bills anymore, because if you're not one that knows how to work, there's a lot of really smart people who are in prison. A lot of really smart people who are just kind of stuck because they never learned how to work and how to solve problems, etc. So that's my thought there. You want them to be a critical thinker, absolutely. Curious over a straight A student. This is the second time I've heard a theme around grades. So my spidey sense is starting to tingle a little bit. We want to make sure that grades are not the element of evaluation here. It's really about the child's engagement level and their energy around learning and their desire to learn. Which would you choose for the child? Now, this is one that, again, now all sorts of alarm bells are going off gently and respectfully. The value of the elite college degree is declining, folks. It's declining. Not only is it declining, but it's also getting more and more expensive. So as you think about what makes a successful life, the college degree increasingly is less and less in that category. But clear purpose is absolutely a really clear indicator of a life well lived. So here's one. I'm happy to talk to you more about this if you'd like, but that's just my reaction to this. You're pretty informed about technology. Very good. Excellent. This is getting a little long, by the way, but I hope this is helpful. Is the child's education complete? Now, this is great news. If you're feeling like they are in a good pathway to be prepared for the future, and it sounds like you have a good idea about technologies, that's fantastic. That means your child's going to be pretty good. You're aware. You're navigating the child. You have the opportunity to shape how their child is learning. I feel, despite all my comments about red flags and yellow flags and that sort of thing. I feel really good about what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing from y'all. I really, 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 really encourage you to have an on paper, on purpose learning plan for your child. And this is something that the child develops along with the parent. And at the age of 6 to 9, that can happen. But again, moving the ownership of learning from the parent to the child is kind of the key element. Again, because the child will be free when they know that they can solve their own problems. And guess what? So will you. You will be free as well. All right. Specific question. She doesn't have experience managing other children's behaviors and work styles. So I'm assuming, if I'm reading this correctly, is that your child has been working independently at home, and so working with other kids has been a bit of a tricky kind of circumstance. To me, the summer is the perfect time to begin testing this and piloting some things and to prepare so that your child knows how to work with other kids. If I'm reading that correctly, if I'm not, let's definitely talk more about it. Whether that be through museum programs, through going to the park and having your daughter play with other kids in the park. That is another place where a lot of learning styles and different ways of working together starts to show up. But I'm not that worried, frankly, about your child not being able to manage other children's behaviors, because frankly, a lot of children's behaviors are just quite ridiculous. They're unmanaged, they're uncoached. And so a child who's well disciplined, as I'm sure your child will be, will find it very difficult to be in circumstances where kids are or poorly disciplined. And that's okay, because eventually your child is going to live in the adult world where undisciplined people fade away, and what you're left with are adults who are disciplined. And so your child may have a tough time, finding connection points, but if you get connected with other homeschool communities, you'll find that there's probably a lot of similar styles and work behaviors that you'll see in those kids. So, all right, I hope this was helpful. Again, all the work that I do is now free based on support at my Patreon page, which you're welcome to contribute to if you'd like. But if not, that is no problem. Connect with me at Matt C. Barnes. Take the next step if you'd like to have a further conversation. We would have a one-on-one conversation, maybe an hour, where we can talk about these things a little bit more. I hope this was helpful, and I used an alias name for you just to make sure that, because your name is a little unusual, I didn't want anybody to bring this and connect the dots here on this. But reach out to me. Happy to talk further. This is Matt Barnes, and I hope this was helpful. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.